Well, welcome to this episode of Did She Really Say That? Here we're interviewing extraordinary women that are shifting the way business looks, actually adding in what's probably been missing in business and redefining what even success looks like for us. And I'm super excited to have Andrea with us. I always want to say Andrea, but it's Andrea with us because we're going to be talking about building that turnkey business. And what I love about this conversation is she works specifically with those in the financial advisory industry. Now, this is something that you really want to look at when you're hiring people. Like, I'm just going to dive into who she is. We're going to get into the rest of this in just a moment. So, Andrea is a renowned expert in business development and a leading coach for high performance teams in the financial industry. You really want to know if she's worked with these companies. With her guidance, she has empowered numerous individuals to scale their business to remarkable levels, achieving multiple 6 and 7 figure success while reclaiming precious time and enjoying peace of mind. Ladies, this is all what we're looking for, right? Getting back time and our peace of mind. In October and November of 2021, the Forbes magazine recognized the top 250 advisors in the life insurance industry. And what's really important for you to know is that there's an impact to these 250. She coached and mentored 25 individuals from this esteemed group, including 3 in the top 10. Ah, that is freaking amazing. Hats off to you. And Andrea's pioneering work extends to her publication. She wrote her first book, The Turnkey Office System, served as a transformational blueprint that revolutionized the industry's approach to business operations. It probably needed it by 2021, to be honest. Um, she's also unveiled her third book, The Turnkey Secrets, which swiftly ascended to an international bestseller status on Amazon and across 5 distinct financial categories. This is a big deal. Um, Her overachieving mission is to inspire you to dream bigger while constructing a raving fan business support by high performance A team. Her proven approach generates more new clients, increasing the financial success and profound peace of mind and cherished gift of time freedom. I'm excited to have you on it because I know we're going to dive into some of these questions. So thank you so much for being here with us on Did She Really Say That?
I'm looking forward to this. This is great.
So, how did you get into this business? So, what kind of led you down the path of saying, you know what, we need to kind of restructure this whole entire financial world in terms of building teams? What led you down to that path?
Well, it's serendipity. It wasn't, I mean, I didn't graduate and say, whoo, I'm going to be coaching financial advisors. In fact, way back when, I always fell in love with coaching. I was one of the women that was in sports when it wasn't fashionable for women to be in sports. And that's a whole nother story that needs to be told. So I really was intrigued with top coaches. I was worked under world-class Olympic coaches. How do you get people to that next level?
Yep.
And I myself had an national rated track team, coached at the college level, got married, which I'm sure a lot of women are thinking about, had my kids, came out of the workforce. So when I came back into the workforce, I didn't have a business degree.
Mm.
And serendipity, got introduced to a brand new managing partner because his wife was a friend of mine, and started just working as his right hand person. And after a couple months, I looked at him. I said, you know what? I'm going to coach your advisors. And he laughed. He goes, you've never sold insurance or investment. What makes you think you can coach them? And I said, because I'm watching your coaches. So he was really nice, Katrina. I think he was just, everyone was tapping him on the head just to be nice. He said, all right, coach these 2 guys. And they had been in the business 17, 18 years. Their production was really low, cobwebs on the door. I said, let me coach you. They said, okay. So I started coaching them in September. In
Okay.
November, one of them, his production was number one in the office. And the other guy doubled his production the next year. That's how my business got started.
Wow.
I started it part-time. For anyone listening to this, if they're thinking, can I start a business on my own? I started part-time while I was working, had kids, and then I went full-time. After about 2 years, I said, I need to believe in myself and go full-time. So
Mm.
I applied what I knew. So anyone, an athlete, if you apply that directly to a business person, it all applies. There's a psychology, there's a basic skills, there's a time management, everything applies to the business. But what happened after 15 years of coaching them, I just saw that my clients would say, I can't see more people. I'm like, you must not be organized. And I went and organized them. And one guy in Boston was worse after I got organized. I said, what's the solution? And I read Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth.
Mm,
So anyone here, if you're an entrepreneur, that's a great book to read, The E-Myth, because he stated the best businesses in the world have the best business systems.
they do.
That's where it started because I realized in that industry, the financial industry, they have the probably the best selling system of any company anywhere. And they're all trained in that and still trained in that.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to building a business, they didn't have any. So I started working with my clients on helping them set up systems, hiring differently, and everything I did, I worked with they and their team. I was in the trenches. How do we scale so all they do is just see people? That's how it all got started.
Because a lot of times in the financial advisor, they're both like the salesperson and the consultant. So they do need to be able to articulate what they have to offer. And then so that's their role. And then there's the business behind it, right? There's a systems around it. How do they see more clients? How do they increase their financial success as the company's financial success? So what did that look like for you? So you've coached the advisors, you've got them looking at how to get organized. What was the systems that you saw kind of because as any business, anyone is listening to this, if you're in business, whether you're a solopreneur looking to grow, whether you've got a team of individuals, this is kind of your next process. It's starting to get into the SOPs, KPIs and all of this stuff that kind of sounds really scary when you start throwing acronyms around everywhere. So let's dive into that a little bit.
So for anyone listening, I'll just ask you all a question. And this is a question that's going to get you to think differently.
Mm,
Any entrepreneur, you do what? We build our business, we want to sell. Maybe you're an artist, maybe you're a lawyer, whatever you're doing, but you want to build a business, make more money, and you're in the trenches building, right?
yep.
And you just think, I'll hire people, they'll assist me. You have different roles. Here's a question that will change everything about your thinking.
Mm.
What if you could build your business and never have to be there if you didn't want to be?
Ooh.
That's a really cheeky question. But I realized that's a question I started asking advisors. I said, what would happen if you could build this and you never had to be there? And I remember this one advisor, he was from Washington, D.C. He said he made around 250,000, made good money. His wife made more. He said, I have a little daughter. Yeah, everything's going great. I don't need to do anything. But when I asked him that question, he goes, is that possible? I said, yeah, but you have to look at a different business model. You have to think differently. He went from making 250,000 to 4 years later making 1.4 million,
Mm.
and he could take months off at a time. Because what that question does is you get the ego out of it. You say, I don't want to do it. I want to hire someone else to do it, and I want a system in place that's duplicatable. And when you do that, you remove yourself constantly. And so you're building constantly. And if you build it so you don't have to be there, think about that. You can
Yeah.
make money while sleeping. You can make money while you're in Greece. That's the thinking that changes everything.
So what does that kind of look like for that? Is that the hiring of people? Is that the automation of tools? What does that look like for somebody that says, if I don't have to be here, and I think this is sometimes the fear for women is that nobody can do it as good as I can,
Oh,
right? Like I am the best at this. If I hand this off, it's all going to crumble and fall to pieces behind me. Um, and so this need to control every micromanage every piece of it can also be sometimes the biggest detriment, especially for women, in this kind of conversation. So what does stepping away start to look like when you can say, hey, if you didn't have to be there and your business doubled, tripled, quadrupled, whatever, what would that look like?
that's such a great question. And I think here's with myself included, right? What gets in the way is our ego. I'm the best at everything, right? Well, here's the problem when you're the best at everything. And I say this to advisors. Okay, you're the best at making phone calls. You're the best at getting referrals. You're the best at case prep. You're the best at everything. I said, the problem is you can't scale when you're doing everything yourself.
Yep.
It's only 24 hours in a day. So I think a lot of women get overwhelmed because we say, I do it the best. I can do it the best. I'm the one, or I have to delegate and tell everyone how to do it. So
Yes.
yeah, we know that. That's how we get ourselves, we're here. I'll make a women, if this is like tell it like it is, right? We all clean our house the best. Why don't we have that house cleaner? They don't clean as well as I do, right? I have to cook the best. I have to make the cookies the best. I have to micromanage my house, and then I have to go to work and micromanage everything. And we wonder why at the end of the day we're overwhelmed. It's because we think we have to do it all, and we wonder why we're overwhelmed. I'll share with you something I remember. And by the way, if you're a perfectionist, I call myself a recovering perfectionist.
You do. I remember this.
I'm a recovering perfectionist. Because that whole concept, Katrina, about being the best, and we were taught to be the best, right? But here's the truth. You can't scale if it's about you. And if you're a perfectionist like me, it will hold you back. So I remember one of my coaches said to me, and I remember I cringed. He said, Andrea, 80% is good enough. I'm like, what? It's got to be 100%. No, 80% is good enough. That changed my world. And it started me thinking, I can scale if 80% is good enough. I can get someone to 80% is good enough. And what happens when you have that mindset and you start with 80% is good enough? By the time you have the fifth iteration of 80% is good enough, you're 10 times better than the perfectionist. Does that make sense to
It
everyone?
makes perfect sense. Because what I for those that just for the clarification, what Andrea is talking about, and because I had the same conversation with me. I remember when I was consulting with a company, the leader, the head gentleman there was handing off the workshop to people. And he says, I want it to be perfect. So he had a hard time letting go of leading the workshops, right? But he says, if I can get you and you deliver 80% of what I can, that is good enough. And the reason also for that too, why we talk about the 80%, because here's the one thing that I've discovered in hiring and bringing on talent is that 20% is their genius, that they're going to exceed what you knew was possible. And so you give them room to grow. Like you can say, hey, I've brought this much to you. And now they take it and they've evolved it. They could actually improve on it or see it differently. That adds something into your business, that added an element that you yourself could not have brought to the table.
100%. 100% right. And I think, again, if I go back and help anyone scale, there's four pillars they need to think about.
Okay.
Okay? So the first pillar is your vision. And this is where I always say, if you truly want to get bigger, right, you have to have a bigger vision. And I mean really big.
Really big.
So I mean really, really huge.
Stretch.
Stretch. It's like if create your dream life. I'll say to people, they go, well, dreams are for fools. I said, no, create it. What would it be?
Mm.
Right. And so why that's important. Here's why that becomes so important. I always laugh. I'll say, so I'll ask you, I say, okay, if I'm going to give you $5, would you at 3 o'clock tonight take off all your clothes and run around your house 3 times naked? And everyone laughs. I'll say this to me, who would do that? And there's always one. I say, well, there's always one. But no one would. I mean, that's a crazy tune thing, right? But watch,
Yep.
I give you the same challenge. 3 o'clock tonight, take off your clothes and run around your house 3 times. I'll give you $1 million. Would you do it? Think about it. Most people would say, I'm in.
Yep.
So the big vision, we talk about persistency and we talk about grit and what gets you through. That $1 million is going to make you do something. That vision, that dream, that possibility is going to make you run around your house at 3 o'clock in the morning, not $5. So
Yeah.
what I realized, I want to get people to think bigger of the possibility. They're willing to do the things that for a small vision you aren't willing to do. So the
True.
first is, what are you building? What does it look like? Here's the second thing. A team. I'll make it real simple. You can't have an A team with B players.
Ooh.
You're hiring people. That is such a simple thing. If I'm going to have an NFL football team, I want the best on my team, or I'm not going to win, right? So when people then come back and say, well, Andrew, what do you mean by an A player? I said, that's the first thing you have to define. And most people define it by just skill, right? What's a skill? What's a role? What's responsibilities? But there's a whole different piece. Do you want someone that's positive? Do you want someone that wants to learn? Do you want someone that's to stretch? Do you need a team player? Because these are the things that get in the way of teams working together. I mean, I can't imagine hire someone that's brilliant, but they're negative. And every day you listen to what happened, and they have to leave at 5 at night and they don't want to learn. So you have to define, and knowing you, who gets along with you, who gets along with your team, define an A player and know how to hire it. That gets into the hiring system and training. All right.
Yep.
Third pillar, systems. You have to have a system for everything. So if you're bringing on, let's say, new clients, from the point they say yes, what happens next? It should be automatically. If it's an email, if it's a contract, how do you bring them in? What's the welcoming? All that should be automated. And you want to automate if you're doing yourself. And here's the big thing. It makes it easy to do it yourself if you think, I'm not going to do it a week from now. This is my training for someone else to do it.
Yep.
And one other thing I say to systems, if you have to verbally communicate, your system's broken. If you have to verbally communicate. And I always laugh, I say, could McDonald's do 1 million hamburgers a day if the manager
No.
said, a little more ketchup there, no, fold that a little bit here? You can't. So if you want to scale and have peace of mind and know how your business is run, a system for everything. The last pillar is leadership. I can help you have a great vision, help you hire an A team, put systems in place. But if I leave and you can't lead it, people will quit, systems fall apart, the vision falls apart. Great leaders keep the vision. That is your role, right? Great leaders know how to lead, know how to get people engaged, know how to make sure people are running the systems, letting the systems always get better. So those are the 4 pillars of someone's wanting to scale that are critical.
They're absolutely. And I think one of the big things going back to systems for everyone that's listening, ladies, that one of the things that I was taught early on that always stuck with me, if you do something twice, you do it once and you find yourself doing the exact same thing again, almost verbatim, that's the system creation starting process.
Right.
Would you agree?
100%. 100%.
Because that's like you're ready to hand it off. You've already know the process. You know exactly what you want. Go create the system and then hand it off.
Yes, and then someone else does it. And the beautiful thing about creating a system as opposed to you verbally, because you're the best trainer, verbally communicating it, right? Is that when you go away, you want things done a certain way. So me, the recovering perfectionist, when you write a system, someone else just follows that system, right?
Yeah.
But I think, Katrina, you made such a great point, and that is that I go back to leadership and I go back to team, right? When you hire A players and they're all thinkers, they're going to add value.
Yep.
And whatever your business is, everyone has a seat to running your business, and every seat has a different viewpoint. So I always say to leaders, you need to go to the people that are in these seats and ask them their opinion. What can happen in your seat to make it better? That's how you get teamwork, buy-in, and collaboration, as opposed to you barking at them and managing them and saying, no, do this better, do that better. Ask them, you tell me, right? It empowers people to think. It's a game changer.
And I think that's what I find is oftentimes missing is that we think we have to delegate or watch everything. And yet, when we get back to it and we empower people with the tools and the ability to make decisions, follow through on that, that's where you start building that culture and that A team, mentality because now you're not just not so I think we talked back so there's a book Think and Grow Rich.
Oh,
I always talk about like the mastermind, right? So when you bring one or more brains together, there's another brain that gets created. So when you have your A team and you have three, four, five, whoever's on your team as you start to grow, that collective thinking actually creates more creativity because now you're asking them, what do you think? What do you think are the next steps? And that gets everybody to buy in that creative process. And you'll start coming up with ideas and ways of doing business that you probably never thought of before. Would you say that's something you've seen when you've coached and worked people through this process?
100%. I'll give you a specific example. This is one that will always stay with me.
Okay.
Flew to Chicago for a mastermind session with a client of mine. He had two staff people. And I said, look, they have to grow. So what you're going to do, you're going to give them a project to work on. So share with everyone, one of the most empowering things you can do with your team members, give them a project to work on. And here's what team members will tell me. Wow, they trust me. They love
Mm.
my judgment, right? And then you're stretching them. So there was two, a male and a female, and he always thought the male, because he was an advisor before, he was the great guy. I said, well, we're going to find out. We're going to give them both a project, and they're going to present when I'm there. And I remember the female, her project was to get a new CRM, transfer all the clients into the new CRM, and then train us. That's a pretty big project. She said,
That's a huge project. CRM's no joke.
right. I said, of course you can do it. I empowered her. I said, look it up and kind of guide her how to do it. All right. And the other guy had a project about how to generate new clients. So he had a different project. This is what happened when we were there. It was such an eye opener. The woman had an incredible PowerPoint. She did it, got a new serum, transferred the client, and trained everyone. It was an hour of, we were blown away. And she was blown away. And can you imagine, she was empowered. She was able to train out. She knew what she did. The guy got up. This is now open for leadership. I'm not joking. On a napkin. His presentation was on a napkin.
What?
Talk about understanding which staff person was going to grow, and she grew. But when we left that meeting, my client goes, wow, what an eye opener. So I'm not saying you're trying to, get people to make them fail, but here's the point. If you want to grow your team, give them a project, something that needs to be worked on your business. Maybe it's a system, and say, create the system. You don't have to do if that's what you do. Then give them time, month to whatever time it takes, let them present to everyone. And then everyone gives feedback. It is really, Katrina, it's a powerful tool I use, whether I coach a couple of CEOs or my advisors. It's so powerful. It brings people out, their ideas, their thoughts, and then everyone shares.
Yeah, well, because Andrea, the whole thing is that we thrive and we grow as a human being when we can share and give feedback. And if you're creating the environment where you can give feedback in a way that benefits a person and also helps them grow, that's the environment that we're creating. That's the culture you want to create as a business owner. So I think we get a lot of fear around like growing our team or hiring a VA because we feel like it's all going to fall apart. But I think in this conversation, Andrea's really said, you know what, you expand as a human being when you're able to work with other individuals, when you're able to grow as a leader. Now, I do have a question that kind of came up in the four pillars of this. Like, I can understand the vision. You absolutely have to have a vision of what you want to be and go big for this one. We've talked about building that A team, and there is a hiring process, understanding the SOPs. Now, leadership, I've always felt like leadership came before all that, but I feel like at the same time, what you're kind of dropping in is leadership is is behind that. Like, so kind of talk to me about like why is leadership the fourth pillar and not necessarily the first pillar as we dive into this.
It's a great question. And I call it the fourth pillar because I was building like pillar by pillar by pillar. And what I did,
Gotcha.
I worked with my clients, and so I thought, okay, they need an A team because years ago, most advisors would hire assistants, and the title was,
Yes.
do you want really an assistant? And I said to the industry, and they're looking at me, I said, stop hiring assistants. And they go, what? I say, you want office managers, you want director of ops, you want someone to run your business. Don't you want to get away from that? Go, yeah. I said, so a title matters.
Mm.
That was huge. So that's where I started in changing who they were going to hire. Here's the second piece. Then we worked on systems, right? So we had vision, we had a team working with them on the systems. But what happened? I realized they didn't understand how to lead it. And even to this day, right? leadership is something, the old question, are you born to be a leader or do you have to learn it, right? Well, you could be born, but I still think we have to learn.
We do.
We do, and we have to grow. So leadership was like the last pillar I saw. It was like the elephant in the room. And I remember where
Mhm.
it came about. I helped this guy build an amazing team, great systems, big vision. And I'll never forget the day. He called me and he says, we didn't hit our goals for the quarter, so I decreased their salaries. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, I said, this was a joke, right? You didn't really do that. He said, of course I did. You said it's fine. And I'm like, oh, this was a leadership issue. I said to him, how soon do you think they're going to have the resume out? That's crazy, right?
Yeah, you don't read. Yeah, going backwards will kill a company. I will tell you that. Retract somebody's pay, watch them walk out the door.
Watch him walk out the door. So, of course, like an hour later, his staff contacted me and said, are you kidding me? I'm getting my resume ready, right? So, what I see, even with CEOs, I see leadership, I'll call mistakes, missteps, growth, understanding is a thing that has to constantly grow.
Yeah.
This is, you said it before, Katrina. Anyone that's running a business, you need to either get in mastermind and you need to hire a coach. I'm not trying to promote myself, but here's why. You have blind spots. We all have blind spots. We can't see things maybe about ourselves.
Yep.
Like this one CEO I'm working with, every year I go in and I do the survey of what does her team think? Because every year we caught blind spots that she's blown away of positive things or things that she needs to fix up. She goes, it's invaluable. So we all need someone to cover our back. That's what I call our blind spots, someone to help us grow. Think of things we didn't think about, or that mastermind group of peers of, oh, you thought about that? I never thought about that. And what's fascinating to me in the financial industry, the, ready for this? The
Yep.
top producers in the industry generally have 4 different coaches.
Really?
Yeah, who would think? And what's interesting to me, they are the most inquisitive. They ask me the most questions. They're always going to a group, they're always continuously learning. And I think that's why they get there. It's not that they were the most talented. So I think for someone that's going to shut them down and say, I don't need this, my biggest recommendation, open yourself up.
What I'm hearing from you, Andrea, is get curious. I think leadership is a lot about curiosity. When you lead with curiosity, what has my team doing this? Why am I doing this? And it does lead to what kind of coaching do I want? What kind of groups am I in part of? And especially when you're talking the financial industry as a whole, there's mentorship everywhere. And I've actually been speaking with a lot of individuals that are in the financial space, and I look at their mentors and how they're mentoring them, because that does lead to that whole piece. And you should absolutely plug yourself as a coach and say, hey, if you're looking for some help with this, like, you should be going to Andrea for this. You should be looking for somebody that can come in and say, okay, this is where we're struggling. And you can say you're struggling. That is the one thing that I will say, as men, women, we all struggle with something. There is a blind spot somewhere in there, even for myself, right? There's always a coach. There's somebody I need to hear differently. There's a network of a mastermind group, a team of individuals that we can talk with. And you want Andrea in your corner for that, because
And
you need that eyeballs.
absolutely, and I'm just going to speak to something I hear again and again. Like sometimes when I'm coaching a team, I always ask them, "Can I coach you?"
Mm,
And I frame this. So if you're a person that maybe you've been coached and your feelings has been, well, it's a put down or I'm not good enough, I want to just help you erase all that thinking and think this. The question to the table is, how good can you get? What's that next level? And that's that vision of keeping bigger. You're here. I mean, I always think about if I want to be a great golfer, I want to go to Tiger Woods, right? I want him to coach me, right?
yep.
Only because I'm
You're in the Tiger Woods of the financial team building industry. Let's just call you that. We're just going to
love
go
it.
with you.
I love
Yes.
that. So, I mean, think about this. If you go and you can't putt, what are you going to do? Say, oh, I can't golf. No, you want to work at it. You want to get better. And the reason why I bring up Tiger Woods is
Mm.
after he won a tournament, what would he do? He'd go back to practice. He knew there was always that next level. So if you're thinking I'm being judged or whatever, get rid of that. Say, how do I get better?
Yeah.
And I also think what's important, every person that works for you should have that same mindset. That's a growth mindset. And that goes into hiring people that have a growth mindset. Because now you're not pulling the wagon by yourself. If everyone has a growth mindset, they all want to grow. They all want to think. This is how they're all wired.
So one last question as I kind of get into this. So one of the things I've heard in the hiring industry, right? So trying to hire the individuals, the market seems to be this what about me mentality. How is this going to benefit me mentality? So how do you in the I feel like it's shifted, right? In terms of the who's coming into the market. How do you find those ones that are in the growth mindset? Like, is it easier? Is it harder? Are we challenged in some of these ways? Like, what are you seeing out there as you continue to develop these A teams?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So this goes back to where you have to first really define your A player. I
Okay.
cannot say how that's so critical. So I've written a whole hiring system, right? And I keep, I'll just share this with you. I keep editing it, refining it. Why? Because when my client, hiring's not perfect, by the way. It,
What? The hiring process, but there are tons of books out there that tell me how to effectively hire people. But no, I agree with you. It's not perfect.
when I hit that, I'll be a billionaire, right? When it's perfect, right? Because the best of the best can hire the wrong players. But how I created this was when someone hired the wrong player, I asked the question, how could we have caught that in the hiring system
Mm,
to have avoided that? So when you know what you're looking for, okay, then it goes back to what questions you're going to ask the people. And also, I will say this to everyone, people repeat their patterns. We have patterns. So when you're hiring someone, you want to know what's their pattern personally and professionally.
got it.
And so this goes back. So, for example, if you want to hire someone that they're growth minded, this is a simple question. I'd say, Katrina, in 5 years from now, if you could have your dream job, what would it be?
Mm.
I love that question.
It's future projecting. It allows you to kind of see what they're thinking. Yep, I love that question.
And then I'm looking at their pattern, right? I'm looking at were they a person that says, well, I grew up poor, I grew up my my mother was a single parent, so I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, now I can't do this. That's a pattern that repeats itself, will probably repeat itself working for you, as
Yeah.
opposed to the person has the same scenario and said, I grew up poor, single parent, so I went out and got a job, so I had to do this. That's a person that overcame obstacles. I'm just giving you one example.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
person that person will repeat that pattern, that mindset when they work with you.
I think that's part of the piece with hiring. It's knowing the role you're hiring for, asking those really specific questions to find like what how would what are you looking for culturally? What are you looking for? And by culturally, I mean by the culture in which your business thrives in, right? Is the atmosphere fun, friendly? What do you want it to be? How do you want them to experience it? And I point to that because one of the things I look back a lot with in my growth is that I looked at what Disney did in the hiring process, right? I looked at how they brought us as cast members. Like we even were given like a different name from, but we weren't an employee, we were a cast member. So like even the name shift kind of gave you a sense that you were different in that culture. And then when they said, well, what is a cast member? They're like, well, you're all here to play a part. And your role within this wherever you're at, whether it's the park, the resort, behind the scenes, whatever, you're playing a critical role in the stage. And they actually called it Disney's like if you on the backside, we call it the stage. We walk on stage, so when we walk into a resort, we're on stage. When we walk onto a park, we're on stage. And so there's this sense of who are you on stage when you step into that uniform or you step into that role you're now in a role that plays a part of the bigger picture. And so they use very specific language when they bring you in, because then you feel like you're part of something that's a much bigger picture. So that I think plays into when you're looking at what, how are you hiring, how are you building out those systems, those SOPs. That is like, how do you want that experience to be for them, and do they understand that their role helps, this role play their part, kind of a thing. It's like you're all on a stage, you're all a part of this bigger movie that plays out in real life.
So let me add one thing to that. I love
Yeah.
that. But this goes, I'm gonna relate hiring back to vision in this day and
Okay.
age, right? So I say smart, motivated people do not stay in dead-end jobs.
True.
So where it's changed, when you get that smart, motivated person, right? What attracts them is, I always say, look at you, I say to the advisor, you have to sell. This is where you're selling your vision. And if your vision and if your impact is to change the world, we're all attracted to that. Who
Yep.
is part of, like you said, Disney, he had a big vision, right? He wanted a place where families and generations could come. That's a big vision that I have goosebumps now, we all buy into. So you got to say with your own business, how are you changing the world? How is being part of this changing the world? And you got to talk about that to get that candidate excited about being part of this movement. But here's the next piece. You also have to know every person that works for you, what's their path for growth.
Yeah.
Because if you have a dead end job, here's one thing I don't agree with people that come in and say, your job is to complete these tasks. And at the end of the day, when you have done the task, you've done a great job. What's that about? To me, it's like cracking rocks, right? No,
Yep.
we have a vision as a team, to your point. Like you just said, Disney, front of stage, what's experience? You've got to be able to understand that with your own company. What's the vision? What are you doing here? How does that person fit in and what's their growth? And you got to talk about that in this day and age to attract the best of the best, because
Yeah.
the best of the best, there are young people out there looking for great opportunities, but they can smell when someone has no big vision. They want you to do tasks and there is no future. And I tell you what, right now, they're not going to take those jobs.
Well, and it comes back to the very first pillar that we talked about. What is your vision for your business? Is it to stay small? Because then you're not gonna bring in that talent you're looking for. And then, if you go big, you stretch yourself. You have that bigger vision. So yeah, it definitely comes down to first vision. For those that are listening, we're gonna recap this. It's the first division. It's hiring your A team, knowing who you want in there, sharing the vision with them, because that will enroll them in the process. When you get them enrolled in the process of what they're doing and you hand them projects, you empower them, the SOPs, the systems start to develop. You get the guidance of Andrea behind this and you help like smooth this out, right? There's the edges that are going to be smoothed out. And inside of that, you look at yourself as the leader and say, okay, I need to continue to grow so that I can continue to expand my vision to continue moving this team forward. So it is a cycle. It's not like four pillars and they die. It is literally four pillars of like this circular growth process that you and your team go through together. And I think when you focus on what you're going through together, you actually build a really powerful movement and a business behind it.
Exactly. And you get that tribal feeling, and people feel like they're part of something.
Yeah.
They enjoy coming to work. They like each other. They have a purpose, right? People love to have a purpose. To come in and just do tasks is not purposeful.
No, that's boring. At least for me, it's totally boring.
It is.
So you have something to share with our audience. For those that are listening, you're like, okay, what does it look like to build this A team? What do I need to start having in place? So you're actually talking about hiring. How do you hire those A teams? So let's talk about this that you're sharing with all of our listeners and our audience. And this will all be in the show notes. So if you want to get with Andrea after this, you want to follow her, you want to find out what she is, like it's all down in the show notes, wherever podcast is live at. So let's talk a little bit about this, the hiring process.
Great. So I've created a hiring system so that anyone hiring for anyone can walk through this process.
I love this.
I'm sharing a document that's pretty detailed. And so what you have to first do is your first meeting with someone the first time, and your first, I'll just kind of go through it from a high level, right?
Yep, please.
You're sharing the vision because you've got to get someone excited to wanting to work with you. And then you don't have to spend a lot of time with them the first time because you're sharing that big vision. You want to ask them, where do they want to go? You've already read their resume, so you know there's somewhat of a fit, right? But I say, don't, too many people meet someone once, they like them, they like their resume, and they think, great, I'll hire them. There's your first mistake because you don't know, do they have the skills? So whatever industry you're in, the second interview, you're going to tell that candidate you walk them through a system for this reason. You want to make sure that they're right for you and can be successful, but you also want to make sure that you are right for them.
Mm.
So give them the responsibility that this is, don't dance for me. In other words, make sure I'm right for you. Let's make sure this is a mutual, we're great for each other, because that's when it's going to work for both of us.
Okay.
And the second interview, bring them through a testing. So for example, if let's say it's technology, let's say they're going to do Excel, let's say they're going to do PowerPoint for you, test it. Let them do in front of you create Excel document. Don't after the fact say, well, they said they could do it, but they really can't do it. So whatever testing it is, bring it through. Now, with financial advising, if they have to do, let's say, case prep, it's complicated, intellectual, I said, give them a specific case and ask them specific questions. So, for example, if you're an attorney, you want to hire a legal assistant, right? For example, we'll ask them specific questions about a case. So, you know, do they have the knowledge? Because I think mistakes a lot of people make, they hire people and they don't have the skills. The biggest mistake you can make is take someone's title and assumed they did what you think they should do with that title.
Yeah.
Don't.
Agree.
And then you got to know specifically what skills do they need. Test on the skills, whatever that is, test on those skills. That's the second thing. Then the next thing, everyone misses this, you have to reference check. And just a little key to reference checking, and I say this to everyone, look at, as soon as you call someone, you say you're reference checking someone that used to work for them, your antennas are going to be up. No one wants to get sued, right? So share with all your listeners what I call the telltale question. So if I were calling you, Katrina, I said, you know, John Doe told me to call you, he used to work for you, do you have a few minutes? I'm just checking, you know, his work history with you. And you're going to say, yeah, well, your antenna's up. Here's my first question. If John Doe walked into your office today, would you rehire him? And I love that. It's got to be the first question. Why? Because I'm listening to not necessarily what you're answering, but how long does it take you to answer that question?
Yep. The
So
pause between the question and the answer is your biggest telltale sign right there. It's the pause.
you're 100% right. It's a pause because they're thinking, oh no, crap, not that question. I can't believe it. What am I going to answer?
Yeah.
And you can even call them and say you hesitated. Why? Now, if everyone hesitates, there's something there that they don't want to tell you, right? This is also where you can ask them questions like, you know, were they on time? Were they positive? All the things that maybe, and again, this goes back to defining, you want to make a list of who do you love working with? You want to make a list of who you hate working with.
Yep.
Because this is where you're going to find out those characteristics. Then if you have team, other staff members, here's the biggest mistake people make. If they're going to run your business, this person has to get along with the team. So people don't let the team interview them. I said, why wouldn't you want to do that? I want to make sure there's chemistry. So you let them do it. And if they're going to catch things that you won't catch, and you've got to listen to them. Once they say green stuff, we love them. That also gets them involved in knowing it's their team, right? Once they get involved, then you have to have the offer. And so, and then you have to know what that offer is, and you have to know where their future is. And here's the last thing, it all has to go in writing.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times people have the conversation after they start. Well, you said this. No, I thought you said this. And so the first couple months, you're already off to the wrong start.
Yeah.
So it's a whole process, a system, no matter what business you're in.
Yep.
And too many people meet them the first time. They're desperate to get someone. They hire them out of the gates. And now they hired someone. And 3 months later, like, oh no, why did I hire that person? And it's hard to fire.
Yeah, it is hard to fire because also if you don't have the documentation, that's one thing I will say that when you have systems and processes in place, then if there's something that goes wrong, you hold them accountable to what went wrong. That's documentation. And one thing I've learned over the years, having worked for big companies, and I tell even businesses, I say, you don't fire people, people fire themselves. If you're documenting the process, they've fired themselves. They've done enough. I guess work could be the one word I would use to get themselves let go from their job. They were unhappy. And typically, as human beings, we will find ways to self destruct and we'll do it in environments to get ourselves fired.
Yeah, because you're not happy, you're not
You're
growing.
not happy. And so once you understand, I think this is where, with working with Andrea around this, is that you get to see those. And I think as a business, those are some of our blind spots. We don't put in those systems that define culture, that define the responsibilities of their job, hold accountability, like you talk about. Check in with your leadership, check in with your cast, get a peer review, have a fractional HR person come in and have them survey the whole group, give that leader feedback and find out what's going on per person because that is something you're always at work on.
Absolutely. That's, I mean, think about this. I always laugh when I say, do you think that every NFL football player comes on the field year after year and says, I want to win the Super Bowl? They get tired, they get whatever. So who motivates them? Who's that has that vision? It's that head coach.
Yep.
It's that, and you know, you played athletics, right?
Yeah.
It's when you come in there, we all know we can get tired, things happen, right? But it's that motivation, it's that bigger vision, it's that bigger mission,
What
right?
you're pulling you for. Yeah.
That keeps us all moving in the same direction.
Yeah. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure in this conversation because I think this is that blind spot I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs we get into because we start the business and then we're like, how do I hire? How do I get to that? And what I love and I want all my listeners to really look at is grab that download that Andrea just gave and look at that as the beginning part of your hiring process because she touched on some key points. One, it's not just one interview, it's a process of interviews. And when you skip that step, you skip knowing people, and then you're not bringing that. You're not fully seeing the whole person, right? It's a one dimensional, one moment, and I think we make a lot of snap judgments on that first one. So when you make that second interview, if you had some inkling that something was off and the second interview confirms that, it's the double check. It's the check against yourself. Or if you had a bias or if you were having a bad day. Like let's be honest, ladies, sometimes we just have a bad day, right? So allow that. But this has been a great, even a reminder for myself as I continue to grow my team of bringing those A players in, but really making sure the vision is what they're coming into. So thank you so much for your time today. This has been an amazing, amazing episode. Any last words of wisdom before we depart?
Now, I think the last word of wisdom is I'd say to all everyone out there, don't wait.
Hmm,
I mean, I think that I'm going to say this: speed, success loves speed.
does.
So if you're saying, well, I'm too busy, I'll do it tomorrow, just know, no, I want this today, I'm doing it now. Whether, you know, your kids are younger, whether you have 1,000 things going, even the investment of money, I'm saying, do it now. Do it like immediately. That's the biggest thing. Don't wait. Don't wait to get help. Don't wait to grow. Get it done. Move fast. And those people that move fast get there quicker. You're not going to sit in your excuses because when you do it slowly, what happens? Oh, time gets in the way, you get tired, you get overwhelmed, and tomorrow becomes your theme.
Yes, there's no time for tomorrow. It's right now in this present moment to start taking action. So take an action. Look at what it is that you really want to do with your business at any level and start saying to yourself, okay, what is the vision? What is the team that I want? I mean, that is critical. And if you're not ready to hire them yet, who do you want on your team?
That's right.
Who do
That's
you want on your team? Like, start dreaming about who you want on your team because that starts also the critical thinking process as you grow is who's the next person to come in. And then you already start having that role perpetuate in your head of who you're bringing on. So, I love it. Thank you so much, Andrea, for this conversation. Thank you for being a guest here on our podcast. Did she really say that? And you know what? Andrea did say a lot of things that if you thought to yourself, she really said that, she challenged a lot of your beliefs around hiring. And I'm hoping it gives you the freedom to step out, to hire, to learn, and to grow yourself as a leader in your business. So, with that, thank you so much for being on with us, and we'll see you all on the next episode.
Thanks, Katrina.